Hello, hello! Hi guys, it's Lisa with The Knitting Artist, and I am here to talk to you guys about colors and inspiration and yarn and art and everything that I love. Okay, so if you watched my intro video, you kind of learned a little bit of the behind the scenes about like what I do and what I paint and where everything kind of came from. So the next series of videos that I'm producing are all about my different colorways and the individual paintings that have inspired them. So this video that I'm doing is going to be about the colorway Morning Garden Stream. There you go. Which is my yellow, pink, coppery blue colorway. And this colorway is actually really the first colorway that I ever developed. It is one of my favorites. It's so bright and sunny, it just makes me happy. It's nice and buttery. So if you look at it, there's lots of yellows in there. There's also orange. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out where the camera is. There it is. And then there's pops of blue and pops of pink. So it's a very simple colorway. It only has 4 colors in it. I'll be putting a little clip in here later that kind of maps out where the different colors are. This is that same colorway on my DK base. And as you can see, the DK is obviously thicker because it's DK, but it's squishy. And the dye is a little bit brighter, a little bit darker, a little bit deeper. So if you were to compare these two, depending on the light, there's definitely like the orange is more vibrant in the DK than it is in the light, which is just a sock weight. I think it honestly just comes down to the yarn. The different yarns take the dye differently and they cause the dyes to look differently. So I'll go into detail about my bases at the end of this video. But I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about where my inspiration came from, which is the painting that's also titled Morning Garden Stream. I'm pulling a picture up on my phone so I can look at it while I talk to you guys, but I'm going to go in and edit this video so there is a side-by-side so you guys can see it while I'm talking. And I'll put some other inspiration clips in there too. So the painting is titled Morning Garden Stream. It is one of the very first successful knitted landscape paintings that I did when I was in college. As I explained in my first video, I knew I wanted to do knitting art all through college, and I finally settled on creating knitting still lifes that I painted from that eventually evolved into knitted landscapes. And most of these knitted landscapes are actually inspired by Disney movies or animation. This one is specifically inspired by a scene I saw in Alice in Wonderland. So there's a scene right after she falls through the hole and she's chasing the rabbit, and there's a tunnel. And this tunnel has got walls going both directions, and I just thought it was really cool. It's like I could totally make a cave like that for my knitted landscape. So I created this little cave in my studio underneath a stool made up of paper. I think it was white paper because I shined a colored light on everything. So I made it with the paper, and then I filled the space with knitted objects and the gemstones and the ropes. Because if you see on your screen, you're going to see the inspiration shot from Alice in Wonderland. There isn't any of that in there. There's obviously no knitted forms, and there were no ropes or no gemstones. So I took the basic cavern shape and I put everything else into it myself. And then I don't really know why I picked the golden color scheme. I just remember thinking that it was it was just cool. I was playing, at the time, I was learning to play with color and play with colored lights, and so that was the color scheme I picked because I was trying to do a different color scheme for all 4 of the paintings I was going to put in this show. So this one became yellow with a pop of blue. I think I kind of picked the blue by myself. I don't think I had a blue rope. I think I was just using, you know, like what would be a good contrast? Oh, blue. And obviously the sky, there was no sky to look at in my studio, so I kind of made that up too. But it was a successful painting. And at the time, I had been dyeing with Kool-Aid, but, you know, nothing more than a little bit in my house. But I remember, like, sitting down with a notebook that I can't find anymore and sketching out ideas for colorway ideas if I ever was to, like, expand and dye more yarn than I was. And I remember specifically with this painting going, okay, this would be such a great colorway because there's yellow and there's a little bit of blue and there's a little bit of purple. It would just be so pretty. And so even at the time, which was like 4 to 5 years before I started this business, I was thinking colorways inspired by my art. And so when I was finally ready to make that plunge and do it, this naturally became the first colorway that I developed. I developed all my colorways, all my beginning colorways, my very first colorways, I think there was 4, with Kool-Aid. But then after obviously learning that Kool-Aid is not the professional way to do things, I had to translate my Kool-Aid dyes into acid dyes, and I was able to really translate the color over well. And this one pretty much looks the same way it did in the Kool-Aid dye. I put an image up there for you guys to see what the Kool-Aid version used to look like. So yeah, that's the colorway Morning Garden Stream. I'm going to switch over to a video of the yarn laid out, and I'm going to talk to you guys about how it's mapped out and how I pick the colors, and then we'll end with a little discussion of the different bases. So yeah, I'll see you in a sec. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about how I actually translate the painting into the yarn. So I'm going to put a little picture of the painting up in the corner of the screen while I'm doing this, but this is a skein of the Morning Garden Stream colorway all laid out. And I still don't do the hotel pan setup, partially because I don't have the space, the capacity, or the funds, but also partially because the way I do my colors, which is a little less obvious in this one, a little more in some of my other colorways, I really want to have like different colors on each side and different things in each place that I don't feel like I could get that uniqueness with the hotel pan style of dyeing. So I still do squirt bottles, I still mix all the dye and squirt it on, and then I microwave it when I'm done. That's why I do such small batches. That does not mean that I can't expand, because I've gotten really good and really fast, so I'm still able to do large amounts if I need to, if somebody wanted to place a large order. But I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about my color placement and how I go about thinking about the colors that I'm using in my art. So, in the case of this painting, as you saw in the image, or as you see in the image, I have got a whole lot of yellows and oranges that that's where I started. And when I'm deciding on a new colorway, I sit down and I lay it out. I usually do it in my notebook first, and then when I come up with my final design, I do it on the computer. But I lay it out like a snake, which is exactly how this looks right now. And I use colored pencils or markers, and I color in areas based off of where they are in the painting. So in the case of this, which I really hope you guys can see, you'll see the blue. Actually, I'm probably just going to put the things on the screen. You guys don't need to see my phone. Yeah, so the 2 areas of blue are really the only 2 areas in the whole painting that have blue. So there's one at the top for that blue rope, and then there's the blue sky. And instead of mixing 2 different blues, one that's a little bit lighter for the sky, I just kind of played with it and I just make the same blue. So I picked these spots. These are like my anchor points for that blue. And then from there, I started deciding, okay, where are the big areas of oranges and yellows, and there's definitely some pink and some purple. And I just kind of was like, okay, if I'm starting clockwise, going down around the top of the painting, you know, you're starting with that blue. And then as you work your way down clockwise, you start to get into more oranges and yellows, and specifically the orange of the wall and the yellow that's in the sky. And there's a little bit of pink in the sky. And so that's where this paint comes in. And then we're going down to the ground, where there's some yellow reflections on those gemstones, and there's some oranges. Obviously the ground is very orange. And then as we move our way around, we're getting to this big triangle form in the middle, and that's got purple in it, as well as very deep orange. So I'm using this copper deep orange color again, as well as the purple, to kind of represent that triangular form that's sitting in the middle. And then we move over to the corner, where we've got the little nest type shape, and that's got the pink reflections in it, as well as the yellow gemstone and the yellow highlights. We're moving up, we get back to that sky that's over there, and we get to that final wall that has mostly yellow and orange, both in the shape of the cone that's hanging on it and the wall itself. And so that's kind of where my mind went. I really like to map out the painting in yarn form, And that's another reason why, again, I can't really do the whole dumping random colors in places. I really have to think about it, and I want there to be different colors on each side. So it's just too hard for me. It's too hard for me to do it any other way. This is the easiest way I know. This is how much I love it. I love doing it. This is the process I've done my entire, even when I was doing Kool-Aid. And there's just something about it. It's just, I love it. I love what I get. So that's kind of a roadmap to my yarn, which I plan to do with every video I make. Now I'm actually going to put in a quick, less than a minute time-lapse video of me dyeing a skein of this yarn, so you can kind of get an idea of my process. And then after that, I'm gonna end with just a quick what it looks like knitted up, pattern ideas, and some of the different bases that I have. So we'll be back in a sec. Okay, so I hope y'all enjoyed that little glimpse into my dye process, as well as seeing me map out the colors. I think that's a really important part of my business and the colors that I want to represent. And so now I'm just going to end this by showing you guys some pattern inspirations and some of the different bases that I have. So the skein that I had laying out that I was showing you guys was on my DK base, and that is a brand new base that I just started dyeing about a month ago, and I absolutely love it. It's super squishy. And the one I showed you guys was just the basic Morning Garden Stream. But I, a couple years ago, started, besides just doing, you know, the solid all the way through, I started doing, I call it paint water, but most people are just gonna call it speckle. So on my website, it's labeled as speckle, and it's a speckle-y, my version of speckle style yarn. And so I'm placing the colors in the same place, but I'm not getting as full coverage. I'm just kind of scribbling it on, and that is creating this more pale pastel white showing through in area yarn. And so I do that with most of my colorways as well. And then I've also been dyeing tonals. So this is the golden yellow tonal that's dyed to match Morning Garden Stream. I was dyeing a blue tonal because of those little pops of blue, but people weren't really buying it with this yarn. They were just buying it. So I have still dyeing that color, but I'm not dyeing it specifically to pair with this yarn. It's in my shop. I think it's called Whispering Winds now. And there's still, yeah, I've got plenty of blues if you want blue. But the main tonal for this yarn is this beautiful, beautiful golden yellow. I mean, look at that gold. Oh, it's beautiful. So those are my DKs. The main base that I work with, I call it light, and it is a 2-ply superwash merino fingering weight, a little bit lighter than fingering weight. It's the yarn that I've been dyeing since I very first started, the one that I, for a while, only was carrying. And I wouldn't use it for socks because there's no nylon, but it knits up so well into shawls. I've even made a sweater with this base, and it's just beautiful. It dyes well. It takes the colors really, really well. It's really vibrant. I mean, look at that. Ah, it's gorgeous. So this is what Morning Garden Stream looks like on its very original base, the very first base. And all of my labels come with a little picture of the yarn. More often than not, I also send you guys a greeting card with a picture of the art on it as well. And as you can see, all of my colorways are named after the paintings. So the thing about the light version of the Paint Water Speckle is it's actually very orange. And so I often think of like Koi Pond when I'm doing this one. I haven't actually knitted anything in this colorway, I've knitted a couple things in this and I love it. But yeah, it's very like koi pond-ish because the blue in this always turns out paler. I think it's because I use so little of it. And I actually recently changed the recipe for the blue that I'm using. So the blue that's in the DK is a little bit different than the blue that's in my older skeins of this, but when I start dyeing more, they'll all be the same. The sock base is a 75-25 merino and nylon, and if you can tell from this video, it's a little bit more matte because of that nylon. It's a 4-ply, so it has a little bit more structure. It's not quite as loose. And the colors are always a little bit paler because the nylon kind of keeps the wool from taking all of the dye. And so it just turns out into a paler version of the color, but it's beautiful. A friend of mine knitted some socks. I don't think I have a picture of them, unfortunately, and they turned out so nice. It's very Southwest. The paler version is very, very Southwest. My aunt loves this color because she lives in New Mexico, and she's just like, oh, yay, New Mexico yarn. So even this version is kind of Southwest, but this sock version is very, very Southwest. And the last version I have is my silky single. I've been dyeing this for about a year. It is a single ply, 70% merino, 30% mulberry silk yarn. Wouldn't recommend it for sweaters. Would love to recommend it for cowls, scarves, shawls, any like neckwear. Definitely not socks. Do not knit socks with this yarn. But if you look at this one's actually, I mean, again, it's paler than the other one. And the orange in this actually turned out more brown. And every time I dye up this base with this colorway, that's how it goes. So it's like super Southwesty and just a little more muted. So you don't have to like bright colors to like this yarn because this version of it is very much more muted. I use the same recipes, the same proportions of dye for every base that I do because I don't want the sock base to look like my light base. I want them to be different. I want the people to be able to see the difference in the bases. So I'm not adjusting my dye levels based on the yarn. And even then, I don't know how well that would work. I think I'm just gonna stick with what I know, you know? So if you're looking for things to knit, I mean, gradients are really popular right now. Fades are really popular right now. Variegated paired with a tonal are really popular right now. I mean, these two fade well into each other. Again, if you need high contrast, get like a blue or a deep purple maybe, or even like a brown. That would be fun. This is a pattern I designed shortly after starting my business. There it is. It is also called Morning Garden Stream. It's a shawl. It's pretty small, so it might even be a shawlette. It took one skein of the light, and then again, at the time I was actually dyeing up a tonal blue, but this only took like 10 grams of that tonal blue. And so I was like telling people, buy the one skein and then go find a mini skein from somebody, because I don't sell very many mini skeins of whatever color you want your contrast to be. So it's just a like weird shaped shawl that has these little fins on it, and the shape I kind of designed to emulate the painting. If you remember, you know, the crazy tunnel that you saw in the painting, then you'll understand like where this shape came from. And the eyelets are also kind of designed for that, and the blue stripe is meant to represent that blue rope that was hanging down. So I've seen a couple other people make it in other colors. It looks really pretty. You can make it bigger by just adding more rows to the end, or adding an extra section of eyelets, or whatever you want to do. But that is essentially what this colorway looks like knitted up. And I mean, it's like, I love wearing my samples because I feel like I'm wearing my art on me. Like, it's just, it's surreal to be wearing my artwork. Like, that I've gotten to a point in my art where I'm creating art. I'm creating yarn inspired by art. I'm creating patterns inspired by the yarn and the art together. And then I'm wearing them, and it's awesome. I love it so much. So yeah, if y'all suddenly feel like you need some gold colored yarn in your life, this is definitely the colorway for you. You can always message me on my website or on Instagram or Facebook if you have any questions about my products, or if you need a better photo or a little bit more inspiration. And I hope you enjoyed this video. This was my first one. I'm going to be making more. They probably won't be as long. Like I said, I'm not going to include as much backstory, but they'll be just as informative and just as much fun. And thank you so much for tuning in. Leave me comments. Let me know what you think. Happy knitting!